The Buccaneers make another splash hire by getting Chandler Whitmer as their quarterbacks coach. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. I am your host, James Yarcho, writer over at Bucs Report, covering the Buccaneers for over a decade now, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. An interesting trade proposition that could be controversial was sent in by an insider, and it looks like Baker Mayfield may have taken a little bit of a shot at Josh Grizzard. That's all coming up in a little bit, but I wanted to start this one off with the news that the Buccaneers have hired former Indiana co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Chandler Whitmer as their new quarterbacks coach. Whitmer's coming off of the first national championship in Indiana Hoosier history while building Fernando Mendoza into a Heisman winner and appears to be headed towards the number one pick in the NFL draft here in just a couple of months. Indiana was 17th in all of college football in total offense with 452 yards per game, and they were third in college football in points per game with 41.6, trailing only Notre Dame and North Texas. Whitmer spent 1 year as the Indiana offensive coordinator and spent 2021 through 2024 in the NFL. He was the Chargers offensive quality control coach from 2021 to 23, and then spent 2024 with Zach Robinson in Atlanta as the pass game specialist. Before that, he was a graduate assistant at Clemson in 2020, Ohio State in 2019, and Yale in 2018. With the Chargers, he worked under offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi as part of Brandon Staley's staff, and then in 2023, he worked under offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. Now, Indiana was the surprise team in the 2024 college football playoff before being routed in the first round by the eventual runner-up Notre Dame. But Mendoza in 2024 had 3,004 yards on 68.7% completions with 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Enter Whitmer in 2025, and Mendoza finished with 3,535 yards on 72% completion percentage with 41 touchdowns and still just 6 interceptions. Many outlets and Indiana beat writers have credited Whitmer with the rapid development between the 2 years and Whitmer being able to get the best out of the future Las Vegas Raiders quarterback. Here's why that hire is so crucial. If Whitmer can harness the same relationship and the same connection with Baker that he did with Mendoza, that is going to do wonders for Baker Mayfield this season. I'm not saying he's going to get Baker to stop being Baker. There's still going to be risky throws, extending plays, trying to use his body essentially as a wrecking ball to pick up first downs. But maximizing the skill while minimizing the risk is going to go a very long way. That's exactly what he did for Mendoza. He built the confidence and found a way for Mendoza to have an extremely high level of success, and that's why he is going to be the number one pick. Now, one of the other things, and I've had some people ask about this, is that this kind of demotion of sorts for Whitmer. He was the co-offensive coordinator in addition to being the quarterback's coach. Now he's just the quarterback's coach. And while he had some experience in the NFL before, this is a step up from where he was with the Chargers and the Falcons. He knows Robinson. He knows the offense. So now it's going to be about tailoring Baker's skill set to that offense and maximizing the production. I think the year in Indiana was really, really good for him. But this is a guy that has his sights set on bigger and better at the NFL level. Offensive coordinator at some point, hopefully a head coach down the line. Now, speaking of head coaches, real quick, I want to say this because I have seen it floated around on social media. I was even tagged in it a couple of times. No, this was not a move made to set things up for the Bucs to hire Cignetti next offseason. That is not at all what this is. And I would be shocked if Cignetti went to the NFL in any capacity. He has said multiple times that he's been offered NFL jobs before and turned them down because he wants to remain in college. So stop with that nonsense. The Bucs did not hire Whitmer because they want Cignetti. They hired him because he's a darn good coach who has a relationship with the Bucs' new offensive coordinator. Anyway, back to Whitmer and his relationship with Mendoza. Mendoza spoke glowingly about him before last season started, saying, quote, Coach Whitmer is the best quarterback position coach I have been around. Although I'm a veteran, I've been learning so much, and I feel like I've been getting better every day. And I'm only on the up curve. I'm extremely grateful to have him. He's a phenomenal coach, phenomenal person. I'm blessed. He's a special quarterbacks coach, nothing like I've ever had before, end quote. Well, the results certainly showed that he was on the upswing and that Whitmer made the difference. It played out right there on the field every Saturday. That's the entire point of bringing him to Tampa, to get that kind of jump for Baker, because we've seen what Baker is capable of. We have seen those kinds of things in recent seasons with the Buccaneers, but now it's about the consistency. It's about getting those epic Baker performances week after week instead of sporadically. That is the key to the success of the Buccaneers offense. Overall, I think this is a great hire. It's not often that a hire for a quarterback's coach is getting national attention, but this one certainly did. And it seems like there's a lot of people within the game, both media as well as others, that believe Whitmer is one of the next up-and-coming young coaches that is ready to make a splash in the NFL. So the biggest challenge, if this offense is as good as we think it can be, will be keeping Whitmer beyond this season, because he might be getting some offensive coordinator offers sooner than later. I don't think that it means that he would be potentially going back to college. I think going to college this last year with Indiana was the experience that he needed. But if he starts getting those kinds of calls and those kinds of interviews in the NFL, the Bucs could be looking for another quarterback's coach next year. But you cannot speak too highly or too much about the relationship between the quarterback's coach and the quarterback. It ranks right up there with the relationship between a quarterback and an offensive coordinator. Those two have to be in sync. The quarterback coach has to understand what the strengths and weaknesses of his quarterbacks are, and then he has to tailor their game to maximize the strengths and minimize the weaknesses. We know Baker has some weaknesses in his game. He's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But when he's on, he's on. We're talking about a guy that just 2 years ago had 4,500 yards and 40-plus touchdowns, completing over 70% of his passes. So we know that the capability is there. We know that the weapons are there in this offense, and that Zach Robinson is going to tailor the offense to those players. Now it's about Whitmer coming in and helping Baker shake off some of the bad habits, some of the decision-making processes that have put him into bad positions that we saw a lot down the stretch last year after the bye week when the Bucs were losing all of those games. We know Baker was battling through injury. We know that he didn't have a healthy offensive line in front of him. We know all of those things. But that doesn't mean that the process and the decision-making can't be shifted just a little bit. You don't want to take that dog out of Baker. What you want to do is you want to harness it, and you want to use it for positive plays, not for risky ones. There's still some more position coaches that do need to be hired, but this to me was kind of that big fish of that tier of coaching, and the Bucs appear to be in really good shape on the offensive side of the ball. But would the Bucs be willing to trade one of those offensive pieces? The proposal was sent in by one of the insiders, and I'm going to dive into that. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tax season does not have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work with you on every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, get the updates right in the TurboTax app. And I can tell you, I've been a dedicated TurboTax user since I started doing my own taxes. And I've stayed with them because of how easy they make everything and because they ensure that I never miss out with their expert help. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off of your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. And it can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on you, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off of yourself. It's easy to assume that everyone else has the perfect relationship, but most people are working through something. Therapy can help you recognize patterns that might be weighing relationships down. It can help you communicate better, set healthier boundaries, and stop carrying everything alone. And even if you're not in a relationship right now, therapy can help you feel more confident in what you want moving forward. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the U.S., and they do the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do so at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, check out the Everydayer Club. There's a couple of different tiers there. You can get all access exclusive episodes. You can get discounts to the merch store. You can get daily newsletter, ad-free episodes. Just check out the link in the show notes. Insider Tom and I have been having a lot of conversations lately, and he texted me some of his thoughts. Now, I'm going to read all of this for context so you can see where he started to where he is going with all of this. But he does offer up a pretty controversial take. Tom said, quote, "Let me take you on a recent roster journey the Buccaneers have been on. At the end of 2017, the Bucs defensive backs were bust Vernon Hargreaves, 10-year washed-up vet Brent Grimes, washed-up Chris Conti, and rookie Justin Evans. They weren't terrible that season, nabbing 10 interceptions between them, but Jason Light needed upgrades in the draft. So for the next 3 drafts in the first 3 rounds, they picked MJ Stewart, Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean, Mike Edwards, and Antoine Himfield Jr. That group won a Super Bowl after adding JPP, Sue, and Barrett as free agents/trades. Yes, I know we had speed and motivated Devin White in there too. Fast forward to 2024, he's starting to do it again, drafting Tyke Smith, Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish in the past 2 years. What if, and hear me out, we draft a corner in round 1? Maybe all the legit edges and linebackers are gone. We could take Jermond McCoy, Mansour Delane, Avion Terrell, or Colton Hood. That way we have great depth at corner. We pick up a linebacker in free agency and a linebacker in rounds 2 or 3. This class is deep. That leaves the edge problem. Everything I'm seeing is that Maxx Crosby will cost too much draft capital for Light, but what if, and hear me out again, we dangle Chris Godwin as part of the deal? I love Chris. I have signed gear by him, but he is getting up there and has an injury history. We are loaded at wide receiver. This depends, obviously, if Mike comes back. And I could see the Raiders and Brady loving the idea of Godwin pairing with Mendoza as a safety blanket. Maybe that gets Crosby to Tampa along with a 2027 second or third. Tom, thank you so much for the text. I think you have a lot of great stuff in here, and I love the premise of the entire idea. I like the connection between Light's past and what he's doing in the present. Do I think the Bucs could get Crosby for Godwin and a day 2 pick next year? No, I do not. First and foremost, no, I do not. If you're talking Godwin and a day 2 pick this year, plus maybe a conditional pick in 2027, I think you're getting a lot closer. Here's the thing. I don't think the Bucs can trade Chris. Not that they would want to, but I truly don't think that they can. The optics there would be destructive. Light has made some questionable decisions in the past. Sure, every GM absolutely has. But trading away Godwin would be hard for him to overcome. This is a player that turned down tons more money just a year ago from multiple teams, including one that's in the Super Bowl this weekend, to stay in Tampa. He gave a legitimate hometown discount because of his love for this team, this organization, this community, and his teammates. To take that kind of love and respect that he showed you as an organization and then ship him off in a trade would be crushing. On top of that, it could have a very serious and severe ripple effect. If you trade away Chris Godwin, that's going to piss off Mike Evans, who then may not want to return because his longtime friend and partner in crime had been sent away in that fashion. It could send a message to your younger guys like Jalen McMillan and Emeka Egbuka that loyalty only lasts for so long before I use you as a piece in something else. That may not lead them to be as team friendly come contract time as Chris and Mike were in the past. I think the short-term effects and long-term effects would be too great. The fans would have an even larger backlash than they did when the Bucs retained Todd Bowles. And if it doesn't work, Jason will be run out of town. Excuse me. I think the more likely scenario would be trading Jalen McMillan. Now, that's not to say it's going to happen or that I want it to happen or that fans would be happy about it. But I think if you see that the Bucs traded McMillan, 2026 third, a 2027 fifth for Maxx Crosby, fans would say, man, that's a lot. I hate to lose J-Mac, but I get it. We're still loaded at receiver with Mike, Chris, Mech, and Tez. So it sucks, but the defense just got so much better. If it was Chris, there's not going to be that level of understanding. It's going to be, this guy could have left multiple times and didn't. He took less to stay here, and you ship him off without a care in the world. The idea of Crosby will not be enough to take the sting away. And believe me, I get it. Jason cannot base his decisions on what the fans think. If you listen to the fans, you're going to be sitting with him soon. That's a very long-running mantra because it's true. He has to do what's in the best interest of the team. At the same time, there are just some moves that you don't make. And I think trading Chris would be one of those. That would be right up there with trading Mike, trading Levante, trading Tristan. You just can't do it because you're putting yourself in a position to where if you do not win a Super Bowl that year, the fans will never forgive you. And the players you're trying to build around will say, man, if Chris isn't safe, no one is safe. So I'm going to leave on my own terms. And you're going to start to see all this young talent and all of these impact players that you have drafted over the course of the last 5, 6, 7 years start to leave in free agency because they see an organization that isn't loyal to you the way that they make it seem. They're only loyal to you to a point before you are a disposable a piece of their franchise. You are a disposable asset if they feel like they can go out and get something else. Not all players are that way. You know, I wouldn't even put Bucky Irving in that category. Honestly, I love him. You guys know that I love him. I wouldn't even put Antoine Winfield Jr. in that category right now. I think you have 3 guys, not including Levante, because it still seems up in the air whether or not Levante is going to retire. But I think you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Tristan Wirfs as the 3 players that you really cannot trade away. If you traded them and it didn't work, that could torpedo this organization. You want Antoine around. You want Vita Vea around. You want, Bucky Irving around. You want all those guys. But they aren't untouchable. I think Chris Godwin is in the category of untouchable. So while I love the idea and the way you're starting to piece that together, I just don't think you can use a guy that turned down $20+ million to play for another team to come back and play for you when he could be playing in a Super Bowl this weekend and ship him off and use his kindness for as a weakness and ship him off in that fashion. I think more than likely, if you're going to have a Maxx Crosby trade, you are looking at a boatload of picks, including this year's first and possibly next year's first. Baker Mayfield may or may not have taken a shot at his former offensive coordinator. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy workdays, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Home Chef was a game changer in my house. You get meals that come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, quick lunches with, you guys know, I have one kid running off to hockey, another one's off to basketball, guitar lessons. This has taken so much stress off of our shoulders when we're all having to operate on different schedules. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or the hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. And Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save me hours every week. Knowing that you can reach a certified HR expert at any time can give you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnfl. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Baker Mayfield made an interesting comment the other day on the Rondé Barber Show. I want to read it to you before giving my commentary because I want you to really listen to it and think about what he's saying. So when talking on the Rondé Barber Show about new offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, Baker said, quote, "Until you call plays, calling plays is an art form. Yeah, you can be as knowledgeable as they come, but calling plays is an art form. You have to be able to get into a rhythm, know your guys, and then on top of that, you can have a game plan going in. Depending on how the game's going, you might have to flip to plan B or plan C, changing right away." And so it's being able to do that on the fly and having the learning experience is invaluable, end quote. Now, what do you think he's saying here? Because to me, he's talking about Grizz and kind of calling him out for what I had been saying on the show for the last couple of months of the season. He can't do the situational stuff. Baker references needing to have a plan B or plan C and switching to them quickly. You also have to switch to them seamlessly. That never seemed to happen last season. It was plan A and just hope that it works. Being able to adjust on the fly and play that chess match is something that we watched Liam Cohen do extremely well. That's why he's the head coach in Jacksonville now. It was something that we saw Dave Canales learn to do on the fly and get better as the season progressed. That's why he's the head coach in Carolina right now. We never saw that progression from Josh Grizzard. And maybe, like we said before, it was too much too soon for Grizz. He's got another chance now as the pass game coordinator with the Eagles. He has great experience as a play caller now that he can carry into another job where he's learned what to do, what not to do from that perspective. And the only way that you get experience is by actually doing it. So there's always going to be growing pains. We talked about that a lot for Dave Canales and for Josh Grizzard heading into their first seasons as offensive coordinators. You can't train for it, right? You cannot train for that live action, having to do it in real time. You can't sit down and play 800 hours of Madden and go, yep, I got it. I can call plays. This is easy. So Baker is dead on when he talks about it being an art form, but I also think he was calling out some of the problems that Grizz had in the kindest possible way that he could do it. If you break it down with the thought of this being about Grizz, Baker calls him as knowledgeable as they come. So he's not saying that Grizz isn't a great offensive mind or didn't know what he was doing. He just calls out some of the key nuances of the job that Grizz didn't have in his repertoire. That's how these things go sometimes. It didn't work, you move on. You hope for the best, but if it doesn't work, you move on. Now they're in a situation where they can try to best maximize the talent of the offense, and they're surrounding that talent with some of the best offensive minds that they can find. Robinson was the first step. Now Whitmer is the next one. If that quote really was a slight against Grizz, I can assure you it was not meant to be derogatory. It was not meant to be inflammatory. It was not meant to hurt Josh Grizzard's feelings. The fact of the matter is the entire team underperformed last season, but you could see the shortcomings on the offensive side more clearly from a schematic standpoint rather than a personnel standpoint. We have clear and obvious evidence that Bowles' defensive scheme works when he has the personnel. Grizz's offense got worse by the week, especially once they started getting healthy. That's not how it was supposed to happen. It was supposed to be the opposite. So you can understand the frustration from Baker in that he isn't attacking Grizz as a person. He isn't attacking him because he doesn't like him or to try to twist the knife, just that things didn't turn out the way that either of them wanted. The play calling experience is what it is. Grizz will take those lessons. He interviewed for the Eagles offensive coordinator job, and instead of getting that, he lands as the pass rush specialist, or I'm sorry, the passing game coordinator. So 1 year, 2 years from now, he could be promoted to the Eagles offensive coordinator job. And he's going to say, all right, I did this stuff in Tampa and it worked really well. I want to incorporate that. But then I also did this stuff in Tampa when I was calling plays and it blew up in my face. I'm not doing any of that. And he's going to grow as a coach. He's going to grow as a coordinator, and he's going to be better for it. If the Bucs had more time, more specifically, if Todd Bowles had more time, we might have gotten a second season out of Josh Grizzard. But Bowles is up against it. His back is against the wall. He had to make a move to try to improve this offense. Being healthy goes a long way, but bringing in Zach Robinson, I think, is going to be more of what they thought Grizz was going to be, having worked under Liam Cohen. Now they're going to get back to that McVay-inspired offense with someone who has multiple years of play calling experience in an offense that should really, work really well with the offensive weapons that this team has. That's going to do it for this episode. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs, Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs in both of those places. Follow on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the Everydayer Club and the All Access tier. You can click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonbucs.supercast.com. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to become an All Access member, it's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube, leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.